there. All right. Amanda will be here as soon as she can. It was snowing in Denver where she lives apparently, and she's in carpool still. She has an
Okay.
11-year-old. So
Where are you at?
I am in Baltimore, outside of Baltimore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll do an introduction later. I can just record that afterwards, and because I only have Zoom for 40 minutes, it'll allow me, I guess. So very good. So how are we doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Just got back from a lovely lunch with the wife, sitting outside. It got a little warm today, so we went and sat outside a little cafe we like in Berkeley.
Very nice. And you guys have been married just over a year, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've been together for almost 5, but only been married just a little over a year, about a year and a half.
Very nice. Very nice.
Because when I was on the road all the time, it's pretty impossible to keep a relationship together.
Right.
At least it was for me. You know, I love you. I'll see you in 7 months.
Yeah, I hear you with that. That's got to be where you take everybody on the road like Bob Weir does. I guess, you bring the wife and kids with you.
Well, he didn't do that very often, at least in Further, but maybe he does more now.
Yeah, I think he does a little bit more now. We had Matt Bush on another thing, Book Plus, that I do, and he that's the impression he gave. It's more a whole family thing but I guess Dead and Company's 17 shows. When you were with Further, you did what? How many shows were you guys doing a year?
Oh God, honestly, I don't really remember. I was probably 100 and something.
Right.
I don't really remember, but it was.
It was summer, it was fall, it was spring, and you guys were always there. So why don't we jump in with
Sure.
How you got into how that happened, how you ended up on stage with Bobby and Phil.
Whoa, you just vanished. There you are. Well, my band is called Box Set. We've been around for 31 years now. We signed with Polygram in the early 90s during the kind of folk rock explosion with Spin Doctors, Blues Traveler, Counting Crows.
That's Mark Twain is your partner in crime with Box Set?
No, Matt Twain is just Matt Twain was in a band I had called The Fall Risk. My partner in Box Set is named Jim Brunberg. He lives in Portland, Oregon, and has runs some pretty big clubs up there. So Bob Weir would come to see Box Set play all the time. He'd come to our shows at the old Sweetwater in Mill Valley. He'd invite us to the house afterwards, and we'd hang out and yada yada yada. And so we kind of became friends. And then when they, in Box Set, it's a lot of harmonies. We do 3-part harmonies throughout most of our songs, kind of little CSN kind of feel. And so when they put Further together, I got a call because, after playing as long as they have with each other, they don't want to rehearse every time a new guy joins the band. So I got the call and they said, hey, we want somebody who can come in and just pick up the songs and find harmony parts on the fly and just kind of figure it out as they go. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm interested. And then they told me how much I would get paid. And I said, yeah, I'm in. And then
you just made my year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was definitely an increase in pay for me. And then they said, well, you have a month to learn 300 songs. And I said, okay. And thankfully, having seen, 60 or 70 Grateful Dead shows with Jerry back in the day, I knew probably 150 of those songs. So it was just a matter of brushing up on really obscure stuff, and figuring all that out.
How much did that pop up? How much did the really obscure stuff pop up?
Well, my very first show was Further Festival, and we did 6 sets of music over 3 days, and every set was a full Grateful Dead album, so it was immediate. I mean, when in your first show, you're doing Blues for Allah.
Right.
Good luck, man. So
Trial by fire.
yeah, I studied my ass off, and I had it down. In fact, I can kind of safely say that during Blues for Allah, I kind of led the way because I was more familiar with it than I think they were at that time. At that, you know.
Oh, I'm sure you would just listen to it. They're probably like, yeah, we
Yeah.
did that, what, 75? Yeah, we got that.
Yeah, and they woodshedded it for a while, but not like I
Right.
did, because I was so worried about making a good impression and whatnot, even though I already knew the guys. And my band Box Set had opened a bunch of shows for Rat Dog back in the day, so I knew Jeff, and I knew all Bob's techs, and so I knew a lot of the people that when I got there.
Right. So it was easy. You fit
Yeah.
right in with it there. Very nice. So we could probably talk the whole time about Further, but I really wanted to ask you about Box Set and
Mhm.
Fall Risk. Were they connected? Did Box Set become Fall Risk, or are they completely separate projects?
Completely separate projects. During the time that I was playing with Further, Box Set obviously kind of had to go on hiatus for a while. We still played a couple shows, when I was between stuff with Further. And then Jim got busy opening up his clubs in Portland. And so I was just looking for something to do on my off time. And so I put together this band called The Fall Risk. And it was with just some friends, it was just one of those, let's throw this thing together. But then because of my connection with the guys, like we were the first band to play the Great Room at Terrapin Crossroads, just because Phil was like, we got to get somebody in there. Can you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure.
We'll be there.
Yeah. And then Phil sat in. So that was a thrill for my friends who had never played with Phil. And that was great. But we did one record, and I think it's a pretty good record.
When was that, 13, 15?
I think it was 13. 13, yeah.
When I was
over
looking
13.
you up, when I looked you up, you have a bunch of interviews from 13, and I think it was adjacent to that coming out.
Yeah, it probably was. Yeah, I think.
Yes, I was Googling you.
Yeah. Well, you got to do your research. Yeah, I think we made it in 2012, and Bob was kind enough to let us record at TRI.
Right.
And,
that was so. He was like at the forefront of streaming stuff, and then just stopped. It just like kind of went to the wayside.
Well, he's pretty busy.
Yeah.
And honestly, the last thing Bob wants to do, and I can safely say this from knowing the man, he doesn't want to sit around home and go down and stream. He wants to get on the bus and go.
Right.
He's at his happiest on the road, as you can tell.
Yep, definitely.
He's a happy guy when he's on that bus. I remember vividly after finishing a 3-month tour or whatever it was, and we finished up in New York, and we all had flights to go back home. It was just before Christmas, and Bob took the bus back, and we all flew. He's just, I just need to decompress and take the bus, and I like feeling the motion, and I just play guitar.
Staring out the window.
Yeah.
There is something calming about watching the scenery fly by.
For sure, and he's earned the right to do whatever the heck he wants.
Yep.
He's a great guy, and he's a rock and roll all-star.
He is.
He is.
So Fall Risk, it does not exist anymore.
Not really. Nah, we just kind of petered out. I got back on with Further, and there just wasn't time to keep up with everything.
But Box Set continues.
Box Set continues. Now that Further is completely done, I jumped right back into Box Set because it's been my pet. I mean, if it wasn't for Box Set, I wouldn't have gotten anything in the music business. Box Set signed. We started playing little cafes in San Francisco when we were in our early 20s, and 3 years later, we put a band. Or 2 years later, we put a band together. 3 years later, we were selling out the Fillmore and opening for. I mean, God, you name it. We opened up for everybody.
If they came through town, you were there.
Well, and we got taken on the road. I mean, our first big tour was actually opening for Huey Lewis and the News, believe it or not. And
right now, you do it's originals with Box Set. You throw in some covers there. Sometimes,
not very many,
really.
But yeah. Sometimes we do.
Right.
Now we do it more now than we did when we were younger.
Back in the day. Okay, so let's focus on who does most or all of the songwriting, or is it evenly split? Do you guys work together?
It's evenly split. I write my songs and sing lead. Jim writes his songs and sing lead, and then we come up with harmony parts.
Very nice.
Beyond
So,
that,
I have a degree in poetry. I'll
Okay.
preface by saying that. So
I have a
I'm a
creative
lyric.
writing degree.
I'm
I
a
also have
lyric
a
guy.
creative, yeah, I have a
Um,
creative writing degree also.
So there you go. So
Yeah.
so what do you feel like your progression has been as a songwriter with Box Set across all these years?
Well, I think it's, certainly I can look back and tell what era what was in
Right.
by reading it. When I was young, it was very, very forthright and incredibly passionate, and maybe not technically as well crafted as I would push myself to do today. But I had things to get out, as all young people do. I had things to say, and something clicked because it took off real fast. And but now it takes a lot longer because we're writing for our 15th album right now,
Right.
and that's a huge body of work. And so
Do-
I can't help but look back and say, well, this song kind of sounds like that one I did 4 albums ago, and this song, and I've kind of touched on this topic before, and so it's trickier to write now. It takes a lot
Right.
longer.
We were talking to Lo Faber from God Street Wine, and about, is it easier to write a sad song or a happy song?
Sad, for sure.
That's what everybody said. That seemed to be the consensus, that
Yeah.
writing something happy that isn't sappy and make you go, eh.
That's the trick. That's the trick. Uh-huh.
You know,
No,
well,
I
definitely.
remember playing a great show with God Street Wine in Manhattan Square Park in Rochester, New York, one time.
Hey,
That was
fun
That
band.
was a fun day.
Yes, it's a great
Box
band.
Set and God Street Wine.
You got 15 albums.
Yeah.
How do you
We
compare
got
that with your
14. We're
14?
writing for the 15th. Yeah.
You're writing for the 15th. How do you compare the live performances to the records?
Well, they're two different animals. You can get everything perfect when you're in the studio. Well, not so much in the early days because we were using free time most of the time because we couldn't afford it. But once we got signed, then you have all the time and all the money you feel like spending. It's your money at that point.
Right.
So you can get it fairly perfect, and that's kind of the way you want it. And it's the old analogy is recordings like making a movie, and playing live is like theater. Some things are going to happen.
I like
Somebody's gonna
that.
yell something. Somebody's going to break a bottle. Something's going to happen. And when we did a big tour with the Indigo Girls years ago, and they're very sweet, and they would watch us from the stage. And we came off stage one night, and Amy Ray pulled me aside and said, you guys are like a combination of the Grateful Dead and the Smothers Brothers, because of we would improv stuff
Right.
with the crowd and get people laughing and everything. And so live, especially if you listen to our live acoustic albums, which we only play acoustic now, we dumped the band years ago. But there's a lot of that, a lot of just kind of banter
Right.
and people laughing,
And that's what brings people. That kind of thing is the thing you go for.
Right.
You share in that.
Exactly. And Jim and I both were in improvisation troops in college, so we kind of have that background. And
Interesting.
so it all pops out. He went, we grew up, he went to University of Michigan and I went to San Francisco State. So miles apart, but doing similar things.
Psychedelic state.
Certainly did some experimentation there. Yeah.
Did the pandemic affect your music, your songwriting at all? Did you get to do streams or anything like that?
I had just we recorded a couple videos for fun, because Jim has everything on his farm, all the tech stuff to make videos and everything. So I would just record myself doing stuff here, send it to him. He'd add a bunch of other parts and turn it into this video. And we did that a bunch just for our own fans, but didn't release it anywhere else. But mostly that was, I had just gotten together with Sarah, who is now my wife, about a year before that, and we had just moved in together, just got back from a Kauai trip.
That's your acid test.
And
Huh?
and
You two were
the,
stuck.
and the pandemic hit, and honestly, we had a ball. I hate to say it because I know so many people were suffering, but her and I
had a
had
great
so much
pandemic.
fun. Yeah, I mean, it was just, her and I, we weren't seeing people because you were afraid of, especially in the early days, you don't want to get sick. And now
I just walked out the other side a different person. Stuff that I
yeah,
had gotten away from for many years, I found my way back to because I didn't have to leave the house.
yeah. I honestly, I didn't pick up my guitar probably for a year. I was just having fun with Sarah, and Sarah is a jazz singer. She doesn't do it much anymore, but she has a couple CDs out herself, and now
She works for Rolling Stone still.
she's
Or
a contributor. She's a contributor to Rolling Stone. She's a cannabis expert, so she writes articles. No, I mean, she trains doctors. She
Right.
lectures at UCSF. She's lectured at a Haas Business School at Berkeley. She's lectured for the bar in San Francisco. I mean, she's now just got appointed to the California Cannabis Advisory Board. So she advises our state legislature and Governor Newsom on medical cannabis.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
So
so she's a big wig.
Right. Are there two separate things in California? In Maryland, we have medical and we just pass recreational. And from what I hear, if you go in for recreational, you can't necessarily buy the medical stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it works. Sarah would know. I'm not sure how Maryland works, but Michael.
I'm just how does it work out there? Are there two separate
everything's
stores?
it's recreational is perfectly fine here. You can just walk in and buy whatever you want, up to an ounce.
Right.
You can actually buy more, but
what do you need more for?
Yeah, I mean, when you can go down the street and buy it, and there's dispensaries everywhere.
Right.
Speaking of Maryland, though, go ahead.
In Maryland, you can get like some ungodly amount of grams, and it turned out to be like an eighth a day when we thought about it, is how many grams you could buy per month. And I was like,
sure,
I guess people smoke that much, but
I don't anymore. I mean, I still smoke, and I thought there was a lot of weed around the Grateful Dead guys when I played with them until I met Sarah. Good Lord, man.
Professional.
I mean, good. The different flowers, and not only that, but all the other stuff like the cannabis olive oil, the cannabis sriracha, the cannabis taco sauce, you name it, the gummies, the candy, the food. A friend of ours has a cannabis company, and she came over with cannabis shrimp chips. I mean, everything you can think of, they have now.
Cannabis shrimp chips.
Cannabis beer, cannabis wine, cannabis soda pop, you name it. It's everything out in California.
Nice.
And it's everywhere in my house. I had to start tipping Uber drivers with stuff just to get it out of here.
I felt like I smoked more when I couldn't do it. When the illegality was attached to it, it made it part of the allure. I can go buy a beer, I can go buy a joint. I'm probably not going to go buy either.
Yeah, well, I think, it looks like we're kind of in the same age group. And I also think that when we smoked a lot of weed, it was outdoor more than likely, and it had a lot more CBD in it. So you could smoke all day and not be fried. And I smoked this new weed where they've scientifically removed most of the CBD to give it more THC, and one hit and I'm good.
For the dabs. They're like 82% THC.
We did that once in the back of the Further bus. Clementi and JK and I, and we took we sat back and drooled for 15 minutes, and all of us who smoked a lot of pot were just like, that's too much for me, man. I don't like
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And let me ask you about 2015 and the airplane show you were part of. Can you tell me how that came about? I remember when it happened at the time, and sometime after getting a tape of it and checking it out, and it was at Lock-In, right? That you guys
we did Lock-In, and we did one at the Beacon in New York.
Right. And you actually had Yorma and Jack with you.
Yeah, Yorma and Jack are old friends. Box Set has opened 4 different tours for them starting in the mid 90s. And we played with a band and acoustic. So they said, we're looking for an acoustic band. We said, we can do that. So they put us on their bus. So we were with them living on a bus for 4 different tours. So we got very, very, very close.
I bet there was some great stories, some great musical moments there just riding on the
Absolutely.
bus.
And that was when Barry was playing Mando with them. And it just a great group of guys. You couldn't be nicer, couldn't be more supportive. I think, not to speak for them, but I think they saw a little bit of themselves in Jim and I, having both grown. Jack and Yorma grew up in Washington, D.C. together.
Right.
You know, Yorma came out to San Francisco, ended up in Airplane, called Jack because they needed a baseball player. He came, bass player. He came out. And so they were like childhood friends, came up as a duo, and then ended up in this band, then went back to being a duo, which is very much how Jim and I worked. And
very nice.
So we ended up.
Yeah. I guess they had what with Papa John. And they had the whole electric band Hot Tuna did. Whenever I think of Tuna, I just think of Yorm and Jack, or maybe with Michael when he played with them.
Yep.
You know, that's what sticks out in my head.
Absolutely. Great band. And so when it came time that they were thinking about the 50th anniversary, and sadly Marty Ballin had just passed away and Paul passed away, I got a call from Vanessa, Yorma's wife, who manages Hot Tuna, and Vanessa and I are also very good friends, and she called and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing Marty's part?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? Like, you know, sign me up." So we had a ball. I mean, what a lineup, you know.
Right, G.E. Smith.
Yeah, and I had met GE through Yorma years earlier, hanging out at his ranch in Ohio.
I know he was huge on Saturday Night Live, but I always think of him as Dylan's guy.
Yeah, or before that, Hall and Oates guy.
Right.
The old early MTV videos with those old 80s Hall and Oates, GE's playing the guitar back there, man.
Oh man, that's so great.
And then of course after Dylan, he was Roger Waters' guy for the Wall tour.
Oh right.
So
and
GE's he's not only a monster, but he's a sweet guy. And you talk about stories, my goodness. I mean, he was married. People don't realize he was married to Gilda Radner.
Oh, wow.
Long before Gene Wilder, you know, when she was on Saturday Night Live and everything. Yeah.
He gets Roger Waters gets big names. He had Paul Carrick on the Radio Chaos tour in '87.
That was a good one. I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that, and I saw the Pink Floyd a couple months later, and I really liked the Roger Waters show better than the Pink Floyd.
I did too. Just because I liked the Chaos album better than I liked the Pink Floyd stuff.
Momentary lapse, yeah. It was a momentary lapse. So if I looked,
it made a lot of money.
Right? If I looked on your phone or at your radio, what are you listening to now?
Yeah, God, that's a tough question. It's nothing really that new, honestly. I'm a big folk music fan, especially the older I get, because that's what I started out playing. So I'm a big Milk Carton Kids fan.
Right.
I think they're fantastic. You know, the jam thing's never really been my great love. I for most of my life, I was a big progressive rock fan.
Right.
Rush is probably still my favorite band.
Did you see that Rush played for the Taylor Hawkins thing in LA?
Yep, and in London. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so fantastic. Yeah, I'm a punk rock kid.
Yeah,
I'll go see Fish, I'll go see Aggie, I'll go see all these jam bands, but when I'm home, I put on punk rock.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely had my punk rock time too, especially in the early days in San Francisco.
Dead Kennedys.
I saw the Dead Kennedys in tiny little places, and great San Francisco punk band called Flipper I used to go see all the time.
Flipper, right? The Nuns. Did you ever get to catch the Nuns?
Never caught the Nuns. No.
Alejandro Escovedo, I think is what the guy's name is. He tours.
Yeah, Alejandro I've seen play by himself because he tours solo now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
a guitar player.
Yeah, absolutely. But there was this place on Broadway in San Francisco called the Mabuhay that everybody called the Mab, and that's where all the punk bands played in the 70s and early 80s. Yeah,
that's so fun. I love it. That was my that was my thing.
Absolutely.
In high school. I walked around with a tie-dye there because the deadheads always had the good weed.
They still do.
They still do.
Actually, my wife just walked in. I'm sure she's got bags with her, so Lord knows what that means.
Right, yeah, I hear you with that. All right, they're probably gonna cut us off sooner than later. Amanda apparently didn't get out of the line there. But thank you. Is there anything you want to pitch? Anything good you got going on?
Well, Box Set is, we're writing for our next album, so you can catch up with Box Set on, I think it's www.boxsetband.com. And the other thing I'm working on is my wife, I've told you a little bit about her, has a pretty big podcast these days. It's put out by the Radio Misfits Network in Chicago, even though she does it here in Berkeley. And I help book people for her cast because I have, some connections.
Right.
So we just had Congresswoman Barbara Lee on. We just had actor Peter Coyote on, and we just interviewed David Crosby.
Wow.
And so and it's all talking about cannabis. It's a cannabis podcast, and Crosby's got a product line coming out, and obviously he knows a lot about weed. And
he's big into that.
Big time.
So he's big into stepping in it on Twitter too.
Yeah. Well, he's an opinionated guy. He's earned it. And he also judges joints. If you send him a picture of a joint,
he can be merciless.
He is merciless.
I don't think I'd be sending much shit in.
But I'll tell you what, he when you get to know the guy, he's a sweetheart, and he'll do anything for you.
All right. Oh, I'm sure. It's really easy to be an ass one line.
Yeah.
I've learned that over the years.
Absolutely. And then just yesterday, I was corresponding with Cory Booker's press secretary, so it looks like we're going to get Cory Booker on our podcast.
Oh, the good senator from New Jersey.
Well, he's a big cannabis advocate, and so was Congresswoman Barbara Lee. She's in.
He was he was mayor of Newark, maybe, or Camden?
I think Orange. I think it was Orange. Yeah.
Right. Because I remember MSNBC many years ago when I had cable. He was like up and coming, and then all of a sudden he was a senator. Kind of like Obama was nobody, then he was a senator, then he was president.
Yeah. Cory's doing good stuff for cannabis, and just
are you happy with the election last week?
I was happy that Democrats did as well. I'm a hardcore Democrat.
At least we got the Senate.
Yeah, with the gerrymandering, it would have been pretty tough to get the House, but I think we're on path to do well in 2024 now, and I think we're gonna have to put up with 2 years of stupid investigations.
Does Joe run? Should Joe run? Should Joe run?
Yeah, Joe runs.
Should he?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I got the stuff done that he got done in 2 years,
Right.
No president in history has gotten that much legislation done in 2 years.
You think we're gonna get Trump versus Biden again?
We'll find out tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's going to make an announcement. I think DeSantis, though, is probably going to get enough of evangelicals on his side. It's all about the evangelicals.
Well, I'm pretty happy about it because I think they're going to eat each other alive.
Right. All right. I'm going to stop this, and then we can